In today's service, we will explore how we can find healing in a time filled with trauma by turning to the natural world. Let us all take a moment to center ourselves and breathe together. Orient yourself to your space. Tune in to your body and your spiritual center, that inner place where the divine spark resides within each of us. As we center ourselves for our opening poem, I invite you to think of the thines and the thous as the natural world. Thou art the song of my heart in the morning. Thou art the dawn of truth in my soul. Thou art the dew of the roses adorning. Thou art the woven whole. Thine is the grace to be steadfast in danger. Thine is the peace that none can destroy. Thine is the face of the need-driven stranger. Thine are the wings of joy. Thou art the deep, to the deep in me calling. Thou art a lamp that lights where I tread. Thy way is steep past the peril of falling. Thou art my daily bread. Thine be the praise of my spirit uplifted. Thou art the sea to each flowing stream. Thine be the days that are gathered and sifted. Thou art the deathless dream.
Northern lights in our skies, plants that grow and open your mind, things that swim with a neon glow. How we all got here, nobody knows. Yeah, these are real things. Yeah, these are real things. Oh, what a world. Don't wanna leave. All kinds of magic all around us. It's hard to believe, thank God it's not too good to be true. Oh, what a world. And there is you. I know you once, another life, here just once, a billion times. Wish I knew it doesn't matter. So here I now, I know what I feel. Yeah, these are real things. Yeah, these are real things. Oh, what a world. Don't wanna leave. All kinds of magic all around us. It's hard to believe, thank God it's not too good to be true. Oh, what a world. And there is you. And there is you. Yeah, these are real things. Yeah, these are real things. Oh, what a world. All kinds of magic to believe. Oh, what a world. Don't wanna leave. All kinds of magic. It's hard to believe.
Thank you, April. Each week, we light our flaming chalice, a symbol of our free faith, a beacon of hope, love, and justice. We join in this lighting in solidarity and community with hundreds of other Unitarian Universalists lighting chalices today in homes and virtual worship services, reminding us that we are connected to one another and to a larger community of faith and love. If you have a chalice nearby, we invite you to light it with us. And if you are able, hold it up to your camera and switch to gallery view so you can see all of the chalices being lit today. Then you are invited to share in the chat. The chalice is lit on 20th Street, or whatever street you live on. As we collectively light our chalices, we share with you this call to worship from Elena Westbrook.
When all around us, voices are raised in anger, hatred spilling into the streets and sparking more hatred, sometimes the best thing we can do is to sink our hands into the soil.
Let the fights over abstractions ebb away, flow like water into the earth. Fill your fingers with dirt that is itself the product of rocks worn to powder over millennia, leavened with particles of other lives.
Lives of leaves and vegetables and other animals, once as warm and active as you are now. Everything dies and returns to its source, breaks down into the ingredients of some new life, bits of hummus, squirming bacteria, a tiny egg.
This is real. The sun warm on your back, the soil cool under your bare feet, a tiny new stem that will unfurl to grow a sweet red tomato, and the hand of a friend gently helping you to rise.
Even on our most difficult days, we can touch the soil and be grateful for the earth and the love that sustains us.
Please join in singing along at home with our opening hymn, Mother Earth, Beloved Garden, while you enjoy the beautiful imagery in the video.
Mother Earth, beloved garden, living treasure under
Wow, that was beautiful. I invite our children to come a little closer to your screen for our time for all ages. Today, I'm going to tell you a story with just my words, and when we come together in our children's chapel afterwards, we will gather objects that will help bring the story to life and make it more personal to us. This is a story by Tracy L. Hurd with some edits. This story is about Henry David Thoreau, a white person who loved the outdoors ever since he was a boy. All his life, he loved nature. It was almost as if he had a small, still voice inside of him that whispered, "Go outside, be among the trees and the lakes and grass. This is your true home." Henry listened to that voice diligently all his life. He lived in Concord, Massachusetts, more than 100 years ago. The town had some buildings, but all around there were forests and ponds, rivers and fields. Henry loved being outdoors. He loved to explore. He liked the feeling of being close to the earth, of being surrounded by plants, bugs, birds, soil, and wildlife. Outside, Henry was never bored. He was busy watching, finding, and enjoying nature. Outside, Henry felt at home. Henry went to school and church, and he helped with the chores of his family, but most of all, he loved outside. And when he went to bed at night, he would push his bed so that he could look out the window at the stars. For Henry, seeing nature and knowing that he was a part of the world around him made him most comfortable. He grew up, went to school and to college, which was back then an especially big privilege to have. His friend, Ralph Waldo Emerson, who had been a Unitarian minister, told Henry, "You should keep a journal about all the things you notice in nature." He also invited Henry to try out his idea of living close to nature. Ralph owned a large area of land surrounding Walden Pond, and he invited Henry to build a home and live on this land. Henry decided to build his home as small and simple and plain as possible. And although his friends and family understood what he was doing, the townspeople found his experiment of living in nature confusing. They wondered why he would want to live that way, separated from so many of the luxuries of living in town. But Henry listened to that small, still voice. Go outside, be in nature. And he felt at home there. He planted food for himself to eat, using just a small amount of land. And he took great care to notice everything around him. He watched the changes in Walden Pond over seasons. He found everything from grasshoppers to wildflowers to be beautiful and interesting. Henry wrote it all down in his journal, spending paragraphs and pages describing simple things like the patterns rainwater made in small hills of dirt by the railroad track. For him, it was meditative. He lived on Walden Pond in his simple home for more than 2 years. And one day, Henry decided that he was finished. He had learned so much from living in nature, he was ready to try something else. He returned to society, to living in town, and focused on injustices that needed to be fought. He would protest and write about the unjust wars the United States was waging. He would support abolitionists like John Brown and people who fought to end slavery, which was still legal at the time, and not a lot of people fought against it. But he would never forget his time at Walden Pond. He wrote books about it, and he taught other people that caring about nature is important, and living simply with the earth can show us what is most important to ourselves. I wonder, what do you find in the nature around you? How does each season change the land around us here in Idaho, in Boise? I wonder, what is the smallest thing you've ever noticed in nature? What is the biggest thing you've ever seen in nature? When you go out into nature, what matters most to you? This morning, our children are invited to join me in our children's chapel, which is a Zoom room set up specifically for interactive worship for preschool and elementary age children. Junior high and senior high are welcome to have their own space after the service with their teachers. Today, we are joined by families from the UU Church of Palouse. Let us sing our children to their chapel space. The words will appear on your screen.
May your mind be open to new learning. May your lips bring truth into the world. May your heart know love and your hands do the work of justice as you go your way in peace. As you go your way in peace.
When we give, we say yes to something we value. We take up an offering each week to say yes to the values of our UU faith and yes to this beloved community. Yes to welcoming the stranger, yes to upholding religious freedom, and yes to caring for our planet. Together, we use these gifts to serve with ever greater love. Our social justice plate partner for the month of July is the Idaho Black History Museum. 25% of our unpledged plate offering will go to the museum at the end of the month. To make an offering, you can go to boiseuu.org and click Give in the upper right corner, or use the Give Plus app on your phone. During the offertory, please feel free to join in singing along at home if you are so moved with the hymn, There Is More Love, that will be shared on your screen. We thank you for your generosity. The offering will now be received.
There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere.
Good morning again, everyone. First, I want to take a moment to thank your minister, my dear friend and colleague, Reverend Sarah, for this invitation to be with you this morning. If there are any advantages at all to the world in the time of COVID, it is that we can be together. Our churches have been nudged or perhaps pushed headlong into the world of virtual worship. So I am thrilled to be with you this morning from hot and muggy Tampa, Florida. When Reverend Sarah and I talked about messages for this month at Boise Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, she indicated that she wanted some good news. I believe she asked, what can we celebrate? Now, it can be hard to find these moments of celebration when so much is with us that is negative and frightening and feels threatening. But we humans have a pull towards hope and peace, a pull that is not self-serving or self-indulgent. At times like these, our need for self-preservation centers around believing that, to paraphrase Audre Lorde, our means of self-care are acts of radical warfare against evil in our world. As I thought about the celebration and preservation, the thing that came to my mind was planting a garden. And it has obviously come to the mind of millions of others this year. My personal story of gardening is multi-generational. Growing up in Virginia with parents, both of whom came from long lines of people who lived off the land, I, for a portion of my childhood, thought everyone got their vegetables the way we did, by growing them. We had 2 gardens about the size of a football field, and out of the red, unforgiving clay of South Central Virginia, my family grew everything we needed. Potatoes are taters, if you're from where I'm from. Corn, maters, that's a tomato. Green beans, butter beans, peas, greens, cabbage, you name it, we grew it. And I spent a lot of time in the summers helping my mom can and preserve vegetables that we used all winter long. As recently reported by NPR, gardening has seen an astronomical uptick since the pandemic. Whether it is a windowsill with a few herbs or backyards being transformed into gardens, people are digging in the dirt. Some are first-time gardeners, others are seasoned. Some have a desire to control what they eat. Some are teaching their children the origins of their food. Still others are planting pollinator gardens to help our tenuous population of bees and butterflies. Jennifer Atkinson is a senior lecturer in environmental studies at the University of Washington and the author of Gardenland, Nature, Fantasy, and Everyday Practice. She says, quote, "What people are starved for right now isn't food, but contact with something real. We spend all day on screens. We cannot be around each other at restaurants or ballparks. We cannot give hugs or shake hands. So all of a sudden, the appeal of sinking your hands in the dirt and using your body in ways that matter, that becomes irresistible," end quote. You know, people who garden have an insatiable appetite for looking at seed catalogs. These days, when I go online to see which seeds are available, so many are sold out. Online messages from seed companies thank their customers for record-breaking sales this spring and promise that they are hard at work, regrowing and supplying stock for the upcoming fall planting season. Why has gardening become so hot? Why, as Jennifer Atkinson observed, are we becoming more attracted to the contact of the soil with our hands? I believe it is, as she points out, the need we have for contact with something outside of ourselves, but I think there's more. There is a measure of control involved, and in a time when we feel the utter lack of control, this brings us comfort. Perhaps we worry about chemically treated food. We hear often of recalls of vegetables due to safety concern. These worries can be eliminated by growing lettuce, for example. We know where it comes from, how it was grown, and the satisfaction of having grown it ourselves. And I will guarantee you, it will taste better than anything you buy at the store. In The Omnivore's Dilemma, Michael Pollan writes, quote, "The single greatest lesson the garden teaches is that our relationship to the planet need not be zero-sum, and that as long as the sun still shines and people still can plan and plant, think and do, we can, if we bother to try, find ways to provide for ourselves without diminishing the world," end quote. I love this idea of not diminishing the world. And nothing is more connected to our core values as Unitarian Universalists as this simple, dynamic idea. There is also a childlike happiness of seeing seeds you have planted push their way through the soil. And even before the planting, I am amazed at the constant reminder of transformation we find in seeds. To think that these tiny black seeds will become vibrant green lettuce, or these little yellow seeds will eventually become Rio Verde tomatillos, is an affirming reminder that miracles do happen, that life does spring from the unlikeliest of places, and we are each afforded the opportunity to be an integral part in the web of life. I'm sure many of us remember taking a sweet potato, some toothpicks, and a glass of water to see a fast-sprouting vegetable at work. Maybe we should all do that again. We can find a sense of renewed faith in the living, breathing, birthing world around us when we practice gardening as a type of moving prayer or meditation. So often in our busy, frenzied world, we are surrounded by technology and noise from the industrialization and the push to become ever more connected to artificial forms of communication and life. Our ways of being connected matter, just like we are connected this morning, but it is ever more important to unplug. To be in the garden means to be connected to a different type of buzz. The buzz of honeybees working the blooms, weighed down with pollen, the flittering of butterfly wings as they dance from flower to flower. In our garden this year, we have had 2 resident black racer snakes, named affectionately No Legs and Peahead, who, when they suddenly appear, are good for increased heart rate and some excitement in the garden. Unplugging allows us to hear, to listen, to observe, and absorb the life that surrounds us. Even the bird song, so often drowned out, overlays every step. In Florida, now is the time we are seeing all our fledgling birds. I've been watching Mom and Dad Cardinal teach their fledgling children the fine art of hunting tomato hornworms right outside the dining room window. A final aspect of gardening that has become especially important to me this year is the connection between gardening and justice. I've been educating myself on the origin of vegetables in this country, and I highly recommend the book The Cooking Gene by Michael Twitty to spark your learning if you're interested. Indigenous populations on this continent sustain themselves with what is called the 3 daughters: corn, winter squash, and beans, all planted as companions. The transatlantic slave trade not only brought thousands upon thousands of human beings to this country to be sold as property, many of the vegetables we now grow came with them. The slave trade was in fact timed to make deliveries of enslaved Africans in tune with the agricultural cycle. especially those of corn, rice, and yams, the latter two not native to the American continent. I have here some black-eyed peas. Some people call them Crowder peas that were picked from my garden yesterday. Their genetic DNA can be traced back to slave ships. I think about this when I hold them, when I shell them, and when I cook and consume them. There is an African proverb from the Twi people that says, "It is no sin to go back and fetch what you have forgotten." I contend that gardening gives all of us an opportunity to do just that, to understand history, sometimes incredibly painful, of food culture, and our agricultural history is of importance currently in America's life. How might we turn this knowledge into action? Understanding the dynamics of food deserts might give rise to ideas around building and sponsoring community gardens in our communities that lack sources of fresh produce. Sustainable sources of nutritious food is an emerging facet of racial justice that is beginning to sprout, so to speak, and we should be paying attention. For most of you in Boise, your growing zone is 6B. Now, this is a tidbit of information you will need if you decide to get a packet of seeds or stop by a nursery to pick out something to grow. Whether you grow zinnias, one of my perennial favorites, or kohlrabi, a vegetable that should do well in your zone, my hope is that you find a prosperous and meditative practice of radical agricultural connection. The virtues of dirt are waiting for all of us to dirty our hands and fill our hearts. May this be so. Amen.
Thank you. One of the ways we embody compassion as a beloved community is by sharing our lives with one another. We create a spiritual, human, life-centered, life-giving hope as a community, nurturing the bonds of our connection. Together, we receive and carry the joys and sorrows of this community. You may participate in this time of sharing by typing your own joys and sorrows into the chat box while we listen and receive the healing balm of music. I invite you to place your hand on your heart as you read our collective joys and sorrows. We hold the joys and sorrows of our beloved community. Alongside our silent prayers, we hold close to our hearts. Gathered up with the joys and sorrows of our nation and our world, we hold them all close, breathing them in and sending forth love. Let us pray together with these words adapted from Lynn Unger. Spirit of life and love, be with us today. Hold us in our worry, our exhaustion, our grief. Keep us close as we sit with truth, whatever that may be. Lead us to rest in the quiet, to find solace and renewal in this time. Help us to make room as you do for all that is. Open our hearts to our loved ones, our neighbors, the beings with whom we share this planet. Lead us to reach out to others in compassion. Turn us toward one another in mercy, right relationship, and reconciliation. You who have seen the rising and setting of suns, of seasons, of civilizations, remind us that we all have learned from the history of the world and from our own histories. Give us the courage to face our mistakes and to repair them whenever possible. Help us understand our interdependence and lead us to treat those relationships with care. In this virtual space filled with love and care, we give thanks for this moment to be together. May our senses be open to the beauty of this day, this season, this world. In the name of all that is holy, we pray. Amen.
I would like to offer this reading entitled Garden Prayer by David M. Horst. Early in the morning, before the children are awake and while the grass is still dewy, I like to walk in my garden. It's my garden only because it shares the same small plot of land my family and I inhabit. The garden does not really belong to me. I belong to it, at least for the short time I'm here. Today, I'm still in my slippers and have my first cup of coffee in hand. Much of what grows has been planted 2 or 3 homeowners ago. Some I've planted since our arrival. But if they belong to anyone or anything, the plants and flowering trees I come to see and smell, viburnum, dogwood, magnolia, and crabapple, belong to the sun and rain and soil. These living things are a beauty not of my making, though surely made of my desire. At the moment, the rose bushes are in full burst of red and perfume. The hydrangeas are sure to open their moppy heads as soon as the sun falls upon them. The weedy-looking globe thistles are turning lovely blue and spiky. The foxglove, however, rules the garden. Its central stalk is 5 feet high and heavy with pink, scoop-shaped blossoms with charming freckles inside. I am awed by the abundance. I'd intended to walk the garden simply to observe and wonder, but there's a weed that must be pulled, a stray stem that needs to be pruned, a blossom drooping and fading that should be snipped. So I set down my coffee cup on the back porch, grab a small pail, and go to work. I end up with muddy hands, wet slippers, and a pail full of weeds and trimmings. Why can't I simply observe and wonder? Won't the beauty of my small garden world survive without me? I step back to the porch to retrieve my coffee, now cold, stamp the dew off my slippers, and take one look back at the garden before I return into the house. The garden is no more beautiful now than it was when I first arrived. My weed pulling, pruning, and snipping haven't really improved the garden, nor made that much difference as far as I know. It's like prayer. The words I speak don't really change anything, but I know they change me.
Please join in singing our closing hymn, number 163. Follow along with Carrie and David at home. The hymn is For the Earth Forever Turning. The words will be on your screen. For closing, I return to the words from Elena Westbrook. This is real. The sun warm on your back, the soil cool under your bare feet, a tiny new stem that will unfurl to grow a sweet red tomato, and the hand of a friend gently helping you to rise. Even on our most difficult days, we can touch the soil and be grateful for the earth and the love that sustain us. Go in peace, go in love. All right, thanks for joining us today, everyone. Please stick around and we'll have coffee hour here in a moment. So go grab your coffee if you don't have it. The youth, we finished a few minutes early, but you can join your leaders in your youth Zoom room here shortly. Maybe give them 5 minutes, go take a bathroom break, get your own coffee or water or whatever you need. And then you can join them in your Zoom room. That will be in the chat here in a moment. And then we will have 2 breakout coffee sessions in just a minute. Rachel will get that up and going for us. So we'll send you into your rooms for about 10 minutes and then we'll call you back and then we'll break out again for another session here in just a moment. So thank you again for joining us today. Okay, 10:55 breakout rooms will begin. So if you need a little bathroom break, give yourself a little break, grab your coffee, come back in about 3 minutes and we'll do the breakouts.